So in IT industry, we say this, right? As you grow as a manager and high up in the ladder, you kind of become less and less technically capable, right? And when you say a manager, he is less capable, director, even less capable, and so on. So what it also means is that the positive side of it, you start looking at the technology as a user. See, the important aspect is technology can be much more effective only when you are able to see the technology as a user, as a common public. That's when the value of the technology is realized. And then you look at and see how the public will view certain technology to imagine how the solutions will work. Okay, to that extent, I have become less technologically savvy means I'm much more like a common public. I understand how the technology is being used by the masses. Okay, I guess that qualifies me to talk about this subject, right? So let's just go into the presentation quickly, and thank you for all of you taking time out and coming and having this discussion. I hope at the end of the session we will be able to have some knowledge enhanced for all of us. And I want us to be a dialogue rather than just a monotonous presentation from my side. I want to encourage participation and talk about, debate about, and bring the best out of this group. And in today's world, right, we are all into the internet world with so much of information and knowledge that is on the internet. Everything is accessible to everybody. So when I am talking as an expert, the content what I am going to talk about, most of them, if you Google it, you will find it. It's not something exclusive to an expert's the knowledge and content is. It's all out there. It's how do we relate that to the practical implementation of it? How do we collaborate it to make sense out of it? That's where the best experiences or best of the knowledge comes out of these kind of sessions, right? That's what I wanted to have it across. And again, once again, thank you, Ganesh IAS, and thank you for all of you to joining this course. So you have a number in the screen. I know this crowd is an intelligent crowd. I know people who are aspirant of civil services obviously have certain qualities which makes you, think ahead, or which makes you think positive and seek knowledge. I think that's how I put across the civil services group, and it's how do you seek knowledge, how do you apply knowledge is all about learning. I believe this group is coming from that quarter. I wanted us to take a guess of what this number is. If anybody want to just open up and talk about, please do. What does this number resonate? Anything at all? I want to just give a minute, just think. I know sometime in a remote call with the people distributed across, it takes a few minutes to warm up and start talking about it. And let me just throw something. It's about some content, right? That gets created in every hour. Can you take a guess now? So this is 208 million photos that gets clicked every hour in the world, right? 208 million in a day. It is 5+ billion photos gets clicked. Imagine the amount of content that gets generated on a daily basis. So with such volume of content, how do we really identify which is authentic, which is not? It becomes so difficult because the photos what you take across can be looked at it from multiple angles and multiple aspects by different set of people, right? It's very difficult to comprehend the quantum of the media that gets created on a daily basis. As we speak, there are millions of photos already have clicked in, right? So that's the kind of world we are living in. So it is extremely important to have a mechanism of regulating this content and make it count and useful than getting buried in the negativity of it, right? And by no means it's easy, because any technology, when it grows, you always have negative get grown parallelly. When you are creating a banking system, you have other viruses and hackers that gets developed in parallel. So the just like anything in the world, as the positive grows, you also have the negative force growing along with that. Sometimes the negative force can be ahead of the positives, right? And there is always a race between the negative force and the positive force. So how do we balance it? How to always be few steps ahead from positive aspect than the negative aspect? I think that's the entire game, and I don't think the world has cracked this solution yet. Just like every technology, you it's a double-edged sword, and we are dealing with that on a day-to-day basis. So just to summarize, right? 280 million photos in an hour. Just count that. I'll go back to intelligence. So I just kind of trying to understand the definition of intelligence, right? And what you are seeing on the screen on the left side is the Oxford Dictionary definition, right? The ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. That's intelligence. So you are able to acquire the knowledge and skills from out there, where it's just all over the universe. There are information and knowledge that is available. We try to understand it, then create that as a skill. Then how do we apply that in situations which is varied in nature? What I learn as a knowledge in certain situation, I can process in my mind. If the situation is X, this is what my experience is. So what would be my reaction if the situation become Y, right? I learn it across in certain situation, and I apply it across in different situation. How does that translates? That's what is our brain is, right? Our brain is capable of understanding certain knowledge and translate them for different scenarios and different situation and applies them, right? So that's intelligence. So if you really think about it, who can possess intelligence? If I have to acquire something and transform it across for different situations, only a living being is capable of, right? Computers, in a traditional terms, are applying the knowledge and skills. They cannot acquire the intelligence. They can only apply the knowledge and skills. So it is part of what we have learned. That knowledge, we try to put it across in some form and skill on the computer. That is how computer was envisaged. That is how the entire technology got developed, right? It never had the intelligence to acquire it, right? So I was talking about intelligence. Intelligence is unique to living beings. I'm including even the plants and organisms of that sort, right? Even they do have intelligence. Obviously, trees does recognize the environment, and it does adjust itself to different scenarios. That means they do develop the intelligence. But computers cannot, right? That's how the traditional thinking was. That's how the design was. Till the time we started hitting artificial, right? Artificial intelligence is try to mimic how we learn and acquire knowledge. That ability, we try to bring it across to the computer world or technological world. That's where the artificial intelligence comes in. So that means you artificially acquiring the knowledge and skills, then apply for a different situation, which makes it formidable, and it is a very challenging concept, right? The moment the machines can start doing things what human beings or living beings can do, it creates its own dynamics, its own challenges, right? That's what we are dealing with in today's world. And the moment the artificial intelligence started gaining ground, you are going to have all the kind of positive and negativity what plays around in human minds are going to be there in the technology, right? So how do we think? There are situations people are positive, in situations people are negative. Now all of them are going to just reflect across on the technological world. That's where the artificial intelligence is a really a game changer. And to some extent, in the technological evolution, artificial intelligence is something similar to mobile phones, right? Mobile phone changed the life, drastically. And gone are the days where people used to wait for the phones or connected to a specific location to talk to different set of people. Now the moment you have a mobile phone, it just frees you up, and the possibilities are enormous, right? And there are unintended consequences that happen. That's what is going to hit across in artificial intelligence. And the technology or technology industry is never going to be the same. It's a paradigm shift. What has happened and where it ends up, anybody's guess, right? So that's where the artificial intelligence makes a huge difference in the world, what we are going to live in. Now connect that with the deep fake, right? Now artificial intelligence makes this concept even more deadly. Fake is not new to us, right? Fake has always been there, and it's as old as the humans were, right? The fake generation. And I would just go, if I was imagining when did the fake as a concept started, right? It's multiple dimensions have started, at different eras. I would say the moment people have just started visualizing and storing something in their memory, that's where the fake started, right? I see somebody or I see something, then I, which is not true. In my imagination, something else happening. I visualize something different. That's in a way is a fake, right? Because it doesn't exist. I imagine things. So imagination is the early form of a fake, right? I'm trying to understand something or I try to see something, then I imagine something different. That's where the concept of fake started, right? As long as it was just only in people's mind, it's a different story. You couldn't actually influence others with those fakeness. Then started various eras. People have started duplicating stuff, counterfeits, and even the paintings, photographs to some extent itself is a fake of a individual, right? You are trying to create an image of an individual, which is separate from the real, right? So all of them are something conceptually we know, and deepfake is something you are trying to create something which is as good as real, right? When the difference or the changes between the real and the duplicate become negligible, at least for the human eyes, that becomes deepfake, right? So again, this is not a very new concept. People have always tried to do this in various capacities. The deep fake or fakes have always been integral part of our growing up. Now with the AI coming in, the deep fake has attained a deadly combination. You are able to imagine using a computer and create something like real. That's where it crosses the ability of the human brains to comprehend and differentiate. It just gets into the technologically vast location where we just find it very difficult to deal with. So
Yes,
what are the technologies behind it, right? There are multiple technologies which creates the deep fake. And broadly there are three types of technologies, right? One is the GANs, and it being not Ganesh IAS, generative adversarial network. That's one technology. That's what is predominant technology that is used across for deepfakes. But there are few couple of other technologies that is emerging, or different scenarios people use it across. And we will probably little go more on the GANs, not necessarily diffusion and the VAS, which is emerging technologies, right? And essentially, you should just know there are multiple algorithms, there are multiple learning mechanisms to create these technologies, right? And in the large scale, it's a GANs. In general, it's a very cumbersome training method. Okay? It takes a lot of time to train with the samples, but you can create the content pretty fast with GANs, right? And with GANs, you will be able to generate completely new content, right? That's where the photos of somebody looking very, very real and not even such a person is existing in the world, right? You have so many people's photographs, you get it across. From there, you are able to generate something which is completely new, whereas it looks real, right? That's what happens with the GANs. And VAEs and diffusions are different models. It can be used across for different purposes, right? For example, VAE, again, it's very easy to train it across, which requires a limited content, and it can again generate fast content, but the variability is going to be limited. Similarly, diffusion takes very long time. It goes through multiple iteration, easily 1,000+ steps for every time when you are creating a new content, and it can create a really high quality content, right? But right now, predominantly 90%, 95% of the technology uses GANs. So what's GANs? Just a quick technical stuff. I don't want it to go too deep, but it is good to understand it. If you talk about GAN, probably you have come across this image. This is a very common image which explains the GANs, right? So you have two kind of neural network. We all, if I can just take a neural network. Neural network is the connected neurons, right? There are multiple neural nodes which gets connected, and that is the body. We call it as a neural network. Our human body is a neural network, and it can be any image or it can be a machine, anything physical, or even our brain is a neural network, right? So when these networks are created, they behave in a different fashion as a network. The individual nodes behavior can be a lot different from the collective behavior of a network, right? And even one element of the network changes, it can completely change the properties and the way how the entire network looks, right? Just to give an example, we do hear about the plastic surgeries. People do, in general, on a face, they make certain changes to the nose, right? When you make a nose changes, it changes the complete look of the face. The reason is because you are actually addressing or changing a specific nodes, whereas the collective effect of the network is completely giving you a different feel, right? So it's similar in the GAN network, where you start giving so many samples with photos of a similar nature. You keep giving it across to the generator. It keeps generating based on those samples. Then there are two elements. There is a generator and discriminator. The discriminator will try to identify any new photo or any new content generated by the generator as something related to the existing sample, and it will raise a red flag. And this entire cycle keeps going on as and when the generator generates an image, and the job of the discriminator is to say, no, this is not a new image. This is not a new image. I know somebody of this sort. I know somebody of this sort. It keeps rejecting it. Generator keeps giving you that. As and when it gets rejecting, it just try to generate something different. Over the period, whatever is the generator image, you just feed it across to the discriminator to make it even more challenging for the generator to generate new images, right? As time goes on, now the generator has learned how do I create something which is not looking like anything existing, anything already the existing samples. So this is the way the entire network gets trained. Over the period, it becomes a powerful new content generator, which is different from anything that is existing, and it is very difficult for a human eyes or brain to process that it is generated content. It looks as good as new content. I wanted to take a pause. And how does it go? Are you guys following up? Do we need to have a discussion and any questions you have? I think this probably being on a report, right? It does take some time, and please do stop me in case if you have any questions to talk about. Right. So it's obvious, right? If we are not able to understand something is a deep fake and it is not real, it's definitely problematic, right? It has a vast set of implications which can be potentially dangerous as well, right? So there are three types of fundamental changes where human eyes can understand from the videos and photos and so on. There are three elements. If we are able to pick it up and train ourselves, it's easier as we move forward to identify some of the obvious deepfakes, right? And when you say deepfakes, you are probably your humans eyes can recognize few of the content, very small percentage of the content, using three specific information from those content. One is the visual inconsistencies. When I say visual, how do you look at it? Our brain is known for real life scenarios, right? When you are looking at a video, you know the lighting is little different, and the facial expression of your eyes are not looking natural, your lip movement is not looking natural. Number of visual inconsistencies, we will be able to pick it up. That's one way of identifying it. Second aspect is the audio. If there are content and the audio that gets displayed or played around along with the videos, when you are linking videos and audios, the sound and the tone and the voices, that however fakes are getting generated, there are going to be flaws there, and the flaws are getting reduced over the period of time. But we are becoming more intelligent to understand those fakes as well. Then the third aspect is the behavioral cues. For example, certain individual, if we know about, will that person talk this way? Will that person talk in this context? Right? Understanding and relating them are ways you can identify the fake ones. And it's not easy. It has to be a consistent learning for us, and we do that subconsciously. As we come across more content, we do start picking up these things, whereas the technology is just growing up to make sure we don't identify it. But these are three areas where we have to keep improving ourselves as a human beings. So one is identifying with the naked eye as a human being. How do we get it across? The second one is technology is also developing, right? So the technology again has a role to play in identifying the deepfake content. One is obviously AI. AI is the one which is creating deepfakes. So obviously that is a solution as well, right? Whatever is creating problems, you just use the same concept to create certain solutions. So there are machine learning and AI models which can identify deepfakes, right? And based on again the similar set of knowledge, right? It's able to identify these consistencies, inconsistencies, then find out and mark them as deepfake. Then in the content, right, whenever the media content gets generated, there are a lot of metadata gets created. For example, the examples are whenever you shoot a photo, it does go behind the scenes, which phone this was shot across, which location it was shot across, and what resolution it was shot across. All those information without our obvious knowledge gets generated along with the media. So those content can be used to identify these kind of a technology, deep fakes. Then there are other features now coming up with various technological company coming out with the solutions like watermarking. People generating a duplicate content put across a watermarking which is obvious and physical in nature to identify that they are fake content, they are generated content, and some of them are digital fingerprinting. Each of the media can have a fingerprint which is attached to the media content itself. It may not be visible, but the fingerprint can be read by tools and technologies to identify which is authentic, which is not. So there are multiple ways the technology is trying to catch up. And for example, deepware and a couple of websites, if you are interested, go and find out the deepfake lag and a deepware scanner or a couple of tools. You can experiment it. You generate something new, put it across. It will identify whether it is a fake content, and it will also give you reasons on why it is fake content. Okay? So those kind of technology is developing as well. So one, as a human being, we have to start learning and become more intelligent to spot these. And we also deploy technologies which can start helping across in this. So as with any technology, right? Technologies, concepts can be used for positive as well as negative applications, right? We always look at a deep fake in a negative connotation or negative context, but it does give you a element of positive aspects as well. For example, entertainment. Your movies with a lot of special effects and creativity that goes on using the deepfake technology, which we all enjoy and which we all like to continue. Those are positive aspects. Same thing happens in education, right? In education, you can create a content using certain real life image to create something not so real, but it helps enhance the knowledge transition, or it enhances the teaching quality, right? Then there are accessibility. For example, uh, for visually impaired or people who cannot listen, you can have deepfake content can be visually explained using deepfake technologies, right? For example, there are so much of books available, and how do you explain that book to certain set of people who cannot read? Or there are audios which plays out good music or content that plays out, people cannot really understand the emotions behind it. That can be explained using fake visual effects and so on. But healthcare is where this can become a real game changer. It is not yet widely adapted. Enormous possibilities. Imagine this: you have one or two doctors, and in remote villages, you wanted to do a consulting, and often people psychology works with, I have a certain specific doctor, I wanted to talk to that same doctor, right? And I'm comfortable, my own doctor is what I wanted, whereas that guy may be a very critical guy, maybe having too many things to handle it. Now with this technology, you can actually give that feeling of the same person talking to the patient, which boosts the confidence of the patient enormously, right? He thinks he is talking to his own doctor. Psychologically, he gets better, and so on. Behind the scenes, either it could be just a fake video, or it could be somebody else who could be talking, but the image could still be seen as the same doctor is talking, right? So that's a positive aspect of it, which can also be misused, right? So healthcare, as you grow, has a huge potential. For example, cancer detection. You don't have many specific samples of a positive cases on some rare type of a cancers. So what this technology can do is, you have limited content, then using deepfake technology, you can create multiple scenarios, and then those scenarios can be used across, or images can be used across as a reference when you are doing a scanning. Even though the scanning is coming across and you don't have a reference point, now with using the deep fake, you can generate multiple images using your theoretical knowledge to create a content which can match and identify cancers. So there are so many possibilities, and realm gets opened up in multiple areas, and more so in healthcare. So negative application, we all know, right? Misinformation, and it can just get into the fraud and cyberbullying, all of those, which is already playing out in the ground today. Right? Those are the negative aspect of it. But it's important to recognize that this does have considerable positive possibilities if it is used in the right manner. So what's the challenges? Obviously, the same thing, right? One, technologically, it is becoming advanced. It becomes difficult to identify. That's a big challenge we all face across as we move forward. Then the other aspect is the legal and regulatory issues, right? And in general, law is not known for catching up with the fast developing dynamic world, right? Often it takes time for the laws to catch up, and deepfake technology is something I don't think many countries have caught up with the laws. So it's in a flux situation. Even in India, we will specifically discuss about what kind of laws that is available and how it is effective or ineffective, right? So technically, deduction is a challenge. Legal and regulatory issues, another challenge. The third one is obviously the psychological impact and social impact, right? A fake video or a fake content with put across in the internet out there for the public without consent or with a wrong context can be a deadly combination of social impact and psychological impact for the people who are involved. So how do we address it? Obviously, there are three challenges we saw: technical, legal, and the social impact, right? So these three tracks we have to attack separately, right? Technology solutions, slightly I touched upon. There are AI and machine learning itself can help identify the technology or the deep fake. The second one is if most of the technology companies get together and agree upon a framework, every content is created by an application or by a technology which is put across by one or the other corporates, right? So if as a corporate, as a technological world, all come together and agree upon certain framework. For example, whenever a original video is there, with which if I'm trying to create something new, it can add a signature that it is generated content, which can be easily identified by public, whether it is a visual signals or it could be a digital signature that can be attached to the file's metadata that can start helping which is real, which is fake. And again, as this comes in across, you are going to have the other side as well developing technologies. But when the top, for example, imagine every Android and Apple phones, these two companies, Google and Apple, decides every photo I am trying to generate something new, it puts a signature that it is created or it is regenerated. 90% of your content out there would become very easy for people to identify. But it has a other aspect. There are business aspects. When I'm just explicitly putting something on the video, it kind of spoils the effect of it, and sometimes it doesn't give the benefit what is needed by generating a new content and so on. But if there is a framework agreed upon, how do we insert any clues into that content, either physically or digitally into the signature, that will kind of enhance the way how we are able to identify it. That's a technological solution. And I'm sure there are companies, or most of the technology world is talking about it. In the due course, you would start having certain frameworks. So whenever you start copying something, there will be attachments that will go on without your knowledge. Legal framework, yes, that's something every country has to identify, and the way to deal with across. Again, this has to be in the context of the society where they are in currently, right? One size is not going to fit all. So every country has to evolve the legal framework in their own context to address this menace. Third one is education, public awareness and education. This is a huge component for the government, especially for you guys. This is an area of subject, right? How do we make sure as the masses, as a public, they are able to gain at least bare minimum knowledge? I'm not talking about a deep, technically highly skilled content. Even content, very, very crude information, right? A video which is generated, and you could very easily say, you and me can identify that it is lip movement is not good, or the context is not right, can still be used as a potential weapon in rural areas or in certain class where people don't have that level of knowledge. So how do we create that knowledge and get this information spread across to the public so that at least the top obvious ones are identified and so on? These are the three areas where we have to evolve as the technology grows. So what are the impact, right? If you see, one is the public perception and the trust will get lost. If there are more and more content that goes in, nobody is going to start believing what is the content available in the media. Already we have, in the election period, we all have seen, right? There are so many videos circulating, and for people to find out what is truth, what is not truth, is going to be a difficult challenge. And sometimes it can be deadly. It can change the courses of election. It can be a huge security issues as well, right? We often see the propaganda wars between countries. There are countries which tries to project their military power using deepfake technologies. There are countries which believes that they have this kind of technology, which makes a huge difference in how do they approach their relationship with various countries, and how the public perceives other countries' strength versus weaknesses. All these can be manipulated, right? That's a huge impact. And we often hear how China manages the content world, right? And often whatever the military might that is put out by the China, the world finds it difficult to comprehend it, whether they are really having those capability or not, right? In multiple aspects. So imagine the possibilities as the deepfake technology is able to be more sophisticated. Right? The second one is the propaganda, and elections is becoming a difficult to process nowadays. Canada accusing China, in some extent they say India has contributed to it, and India accusing different countries and various countries. And now, right now in US, the election is going on. People are very concerned what kind of content that comes out every day, right? And both these political aspects and public perception has a huge impact on a national security as such. It can create unrest, it can create apprehensions, it can create disbelief. These all have security implication for the countries. So that's why this is such a important aspect for the governments and public and society at large to adapt and move forward. So in India, there is no specific law which actually deals deepfake as such directly, but currently there are two laws that kind of governs. One is the IT Act 2000 stuff, that is there is a section 66D and 66E that deals with, in a larger context, misuse of information and defamation and cyber crimes and so on, which says, yeah, media has to be authentically used. It cannot be misused for a purpose which is not meant for, and so on. It's a very broader aspect of it, is what available in ID Act 2000, right? That's the law currently governing it. But in 2021, there were supplementary rules that was framed on the implementation aspect of these laws, right? That is where the controversy of government putting across a rule within 24 hours, the content platform should be able to take out the content, and the content platforms are accountable for fake information that is being propagated and so on. Again, there are multiple views. There were companies like Facebook and Twitter were opposing the government, saying that it is infringing on the freedom of speech and fundamental rights and so on. So it's a very complicated subject, right? And it is something evolving. But right now in India, these are the two laws that governs the deepfake as an umbrella law. I'll take a pause. Anybody has a thoughts in some of these areas? You guys probably are much more familiar and knowledgeable. And any debate or discussion you want to have on this? Okay, moving on. So how is the global approach, right? One, there are international regulation and collaboration which is in play, not necessarily which is already sealed, but the companies and governments have started thinking about it, right? There are countries which is enacting the laws to handle it across specifically, and there are organizations which is getting involved, and so on. One few examples are data protection law in EU is a much more stringent law, which even though it is talking about the overall data, and which is very deep with respect to the level of details it has gone in, and that governs much better on the deepfakes than many of the other countries. Same thing in the US, there are specific law on malicious content and deepfake content. These laws were enacted in the last few years, and they are again going through evolution and gets fine tuned and so on. And there are other countries which are reading these laws and trying to make out how do they adapt those such laws into their own country and the context, right? And again, the important aspects of the global organization, I think United Nations, have to step in here, because this has a larger ramification politically and security wise for various countries. Obviously, UN does have a charter to protect these aspect of it. So the UNs have to get involved. From technological association, there are IEEEs and various other technological associations or organizations getting involved to create a framework of this nature. It's not going to be done quickly, because every country is at a different stages of their growth and impact of these technologies, right? So it's going to be done in a staggered manner, but these initial countries would probably give a framework for rest of the guys to adapt it. So how do we, what are all the ways we create the digital trust, right? And some of them are a little repetitive. It's how do we create the trust on the media? For example, in the elections, there were so many people were actually talking about various manifestos, various concepts, what they would do when they come into power or not. Nobody was, or large set of people were apprehensive, one, about what they are talking. Then the second, always in the mind, is it real video, or is that manipulated content, and so on. So the trust of people on the digital content media is eroding, which is a very dangerous sign, right? Then how does the government communicate content to the public if people are apprehensive about the content that is being put across? So it is important to have the trust restored and maintained on the digital aspect of it. And that's where the three stuff, right? The technology and your legal framework and education to the public comes into play, wherein there is accountability and transparency of the content that gets created. Anybody who creates the content has to be accountable for the content, and they have to have the transparency or to put across information if it is regenerated, it is not real. And that is where the technology and the companies comes in play to make this much more as a framework. When the content is created itself, there is a way of transparency and the accountability brought in. Then the second aspect is, once it is published, the platforms and various other agencies has to be accountable when it is found that something is not authentic, and how quickly the system is able to respond. That's the second aspect of it, right? Often we identify there is some content, then the content to fake content, it is to be taken out. It's a legal battle. How do you make that framework much more robust? And then how does the security aspect is enhanced by the government, right? How does the cyber security aspect is enhanced, and the digital literacy is brought in across, how the government educates the public and enhances the cyber security. And often many of the countries today think that deepfake is much more of a national defense, and it has to be part of your defense policies. It's not just the public policy and the social policy, it also has to be a defense policy, because it has a deep security implications. So obviously, like any content, there are ethical concerns, there are innovations that can come out of this concepts. How do we make sure there is a balance, right? And the balance is in a way wherein net to net it is positive and not negative. That is where we all have to strive towards. And the governments and people like you guys who are more closer to the policies have to understand it and balance it across to make this as a positive effect net to net than the negative effect. So how does the corporate today's world uses? There are three areas which is corporate related stuff. One is obviously advertising is an area where deepfake is used heavily, right? There are different content which is not real can get created to explain the concepts or the products of the people, which can enhance their benefits of marketing and the product sales and so on. But it also has a counter effect if the consumers don't understand that these are generated content, and they have to be kept updated that it's something generated for the understanding purpose, not the real. If the corporates don't do that, it can mislead the public with their products and the services. Then the interactions, how the marketing agents and how the now we are talking about a chat parts and various chat content, various video personalized videos which can be used across for the interaction and so on. That is another area where corporates uses it heavily. I don't know, I'm sure you guys are aware, recently one of the tech education firm used Mahatma Gandhi as their instructor. It's a AI generator content, and they used Gandhi as an instructor who was delivering the lecture. But the content is the current affairs and various current contexts, and they were saying it's much more impactful and people listen to it, people understand the context better and so on. But there is an ethical aspect of it, right? How some of the people who don't understand this technology believe that it is being told by X and Y personalities, right? So how do you balance it across? So that's where the ethical aspect for every corporates comes in across. That's another framework corporates have to evolve. What is the red cross? And that's where the government policy has to come in across as well. Then again, the ethics of artificial intelligence development itself, right, as a technology. So I said the technological companies have to evolve. For example, there are certain things as a companies will not go. I wouldn't go. One of the technology that is evolved, I don't know, it may be possible a decade down. If you guys have heard of, with artificial intelligence, there are experiments today happening where you can swap head of a person. You can detach a head from a body, live or dead, and attach it across to another body, living stuff. Why it is not possible today? Because it's so complicated. There are so many nerve systems, so many things have to be done in a shorter period of time and other stuff. And the experiments currently looking very dangerous. It looks as if they can really make it. There are multiple robots with the AI stuff that can happen. You just detach it and put it across in a new body. Imagine the consequences of it, right? If that technology becomes real, whether it is being used widely, or even there are some unwanted elements used, that now ethical, legal, and social impact of that is huge, right? So would such should such research be permitted in the first place? Should the companies get involved in the first place? Should there be a governance that these are no-go zones for the technologies, right? And so on. I think that's where the frameworks have to evolve, and this has to become much more responsible at the research and development stage itself. It is very difficult to contain once there certain technology is developed. It is difficult to keep that under control. So whereas if we know there are certain content, certain area is no-go zone, just have that as an agreement, don't even get in there. That's where the development itself has to become part of the process, not afterwards. So in a recap, so it's a technology which is out there. It has benefits, but it has a large negative impacts as we stand today. So the right policy frameworks, like right legal framework, right level of education to the public can make this technology much more positive tilted and use it across for the benefit of the public at large. rather than just destabilizing the society. That's where the three pillar that comes into play: how the technology evolves, how the legal framework evolves, how I am keeping the public engaged and educating them. With these, we have to evolve and tilt it towards the positive territory than the negative territory. That's in a nutshell. Within an hour, I try to give what content we wanted to discuss. Oh, thank you. Thank you for you and Ganesh Academy for this opportunity. It was nice interacting with you guys. And often when we are into technological world, talking to people who are involved in the at least studying and getting involved into the policy frameworks are always interesting. And thank you for participating in it. And do send us a email on feedback or any questions you have it across. Do put it across to Ganesh. Yes, I will be happy to answer them. And once again, thank you,
Sure, sir.
and looking forward to talk to you in future.